In the ancient scrolls of the Bible lies a vision so strange, so captivating, that it has sparked debates for centuries. The prophet Ezekiel, living in exile by the river Sheber, looked up and saw the skies open. What he described was not a typical angelic appearance, nor a simple dream. It was something far more mysterious. "I looked," he said, "and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north, a great cloud, and a fire enfolding itself, and a brightness was about it. Out of the midst of this blazing fire came what he called the likeness of 4 living creatures, beings unlike anything on earth, each having 4 faces and 4 wings. And then he saw the wheels. These were no ordinary wheels. Ezekiel described them as a wheel in the middle of a wheel, gleaming like beryl, spinning in all directions without turning. They seemed alive, accompanied by a powerful roar that shook the very ground. Modern readers, especially in the age of space exploration, have asked, could Ezekiel have been describing some kind of flying craft? Was this the vision of a prophet, or a close encounter with something extraterrestrial? The UFO question is not new. In fact, it exploded into modern culture in the 20th century when pilots and civilians alike began reporting mysterious objects moving with impossible speed and precision. But what makes Ezekiel's vision stand out is how detailed it is. He doesn't just say he saw something strange, he describes its mechanics, its movement, even its interaction with what he called the spirit of the living creatures. The wheels were full of eyes all around, watching, scanning, observing. Ancient religious text or ancient alien encounter? The question becomes more compelling when we consider this. Ezekiel was not the only biblical figure who encountered something extraordinary. Throughout Scripture, there are strange moments where heaven and earth collide. Take the Nephilim, mentioned briefly in Genesis 6, described as the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men. These beings were called giants, mighty, and renowned, but their origins remain a mystery. Were they simply poetic descriptions of ancient warriors? Or could they point to an interaction between humanity and beings not of this world? If so, Ezekiel's vision might not be an isolated event, but part of a much larger, hidden narrative and narrative of contact. As we peel back the layers, the patterns emerge. Abraham sees visitors who seem human yet are not. Jacob wrestles through the night with a man who turns out to be divine. Elijah is taken to heaven, not by death, but by what the Bible calls a whirlwind with chariots of fire. Is it possible that ancient people, limited by their vocabulary, described technology they could not comprehend as heavenly phenomena? Imagine someone from 2,500 years ago watching a spacecraft land. Would they not describe it as wheels within wheels, blazing fire, and creatures who seem to glow like lightning? Some researchers even suggest that Ezekiel's detailed description could be interpreted as a kind of mechanical blueprint. The wheel within a wheel design sounds eerily like modern gyroscopic engineering used to stabilize spacecraft. The noise he heard, like the roar of rushing waters, like the voice of the Almighty, could be akin to the roar of engines or thrusters. And the way the craft moved straight without turning describes a type of aerial maneuver that defies conventional flight mechanics, more like modern drone or UFO reports than any ancient chariot. But why would extraterrestrials, if they exist, be in the Bible? Some argue that the Bible might hold coded encounters, misunderstood by ancient people as divine visitations. Could the angels described as radiant, descending from the heavens, actually have been advanced beings visiting early humanity? Others see this not as aliens, but as spiritual realities too complex for human understanding. What Ezekiel saw could have been a spiritual dimension, breaking through the physical world, expressed in language we still struggle to decode. And what about the eyes all around the wheels? In modern interpretations, eyes often symbolize sensors or cameras. Ezekiel's creatures moved in perfect unison with the wheels, suggesting an interconnected system. almost like pilots and their craft functioning as one. Were these living creatures symbolic of divine beings controlling the craft, or were they simply part of the same machine? The text is ambiguous, yet vividly mechanical. To go deeper, consider the cultural context. Ezekiel was a priest and prophet living in exile in Babylon. Babylonian mythology often speaks of sky gods, flying chariots, and beings descending from the heavens. Could his vision have been influenced by local imagery? Or did he witness something real, something so incredible that even Babylonian myths couldn't fully explain? Ancient Mesopotamian texts speak of the Anunnaki, deities or beings that descended from heaven. Some ancient astronaut theorists argue that biblical references like Ezekiel's vision parallel these Mesopotamian accounts, hinting at a common ancient memory of beings not from Earth. Even the book of Revelation echoes some of Ezekiel's imagery: creatures covered with eyes, strange wheels, and roaring heavenly voices. Is it coincidence? Or are we looking at a continuum of supernatural or extraterrestrial encounters woven throughout Scripture? And if these visions were real, what was their purpose? Were they warnings, messages, demonstrations of power? Or were they interactions meant to guide humanity, as if shepherding us through pivotal moments of history? Let's pause and consider the broader question. What would happen if Ezekiel actually encountered a craft from another world? If it were technology far beyond human capability, how would it change our understanding of biblical history? Some scientists and theologians suggest that if extraterrestrial life exists, it wouldn't necessarily contradict faith. Instead, it could expand it. What if God's creation is far bigger than we ever imagined? What if the universe teems with life, and Ezekiel's vision was one glimpse into that cosmic family? Then comes the question of Nephilim and genetic mixing. If sons of God and daughters of men produced beings unlike normal humans, could this suggest contact and even experimentation? Ancient myths worldwide, from the Sumerians to the Greeks, speak of gods intermingling with humans, often resulting in hybrid giants. The Bible simply states, there were giants in those days. Did Ezekiel witness the same beings not as myth, but in physical form? And could these beings still influence humanity today, hidden behind the stories we call angels, watchers, or even modern UFO sightings? Modern UFO sightings often involve bright lights, hovering disks, and sudden rapid movements. Witnesses describe feelings of awe, sometimes fear, and often a sense of intelligence beyond comprehension. These are the same emotional reactions Ezekiel recorded. He fell on his face in fear, overwhelmed by what he saw. Is it possible humanity has been experiencing the same phenomenon for thousands of years, just interpreting it differently based on culture and time? And yet, there's another layer: spiritual warfare. Ezekiel's vision was not just about strange technology. It carried a message about God's glory, judgment, and presence. If these encounters are indeed extraterrestrial or interdimensional, are they benevolent? Are they messengers of divine will, or independent actors with their own agenda? Scripture often warns of deception in the last days. Could some of what we now call UFOs be linked to forces we barely understand? This idea pushes us into new territory. What if the chariot of fire that took Elijah, the pillar of cloud and fire guiding Israel, and Ezekiel's vision were all part of one reality, a reality where divine beings use technology that looks like magic to ancient eyes and science fiction to modern ones? If so, it would mean our entire perception of biblical history might need rethinking, and the lines between spiritual and extraterrestrial could be far blurrier than we assumed. And as you think about this, ask yourself, if Ezekiel lived today with our vocabulary and technology, how would he describe what he saw? Would he say spaceship? Would he describe propulsion systems, lights, and heat signatures? Or would he still say, the glory of the Lord? Maybe the two aren't as separate as we think. Maybe the ultimate truth of the universe is bigger, stranger, and more interconnected than any of us ever imagined. Some scholars believe that Ezekiel's vision might not be the only biblical encounter that hints at advanced aerial phenomena. Consider Moses on Mount Sinai. The text describes the mountain trembling violently, a thick cloud descending, flashes of fire, and a trumpet-like sound growing louder and louder. Was this purely symbolic? Or could it have been something far more tangible, something with physical presence that created seismic activity and strange light phenomena? If modern witnesses describe such an event today, would they not call it a close encounter with an unidentified craft? Then there rests the pillar of cloud by day and fire by night that guided the Israelites in the wilderness. It moved ahead of them, stopped when they were to rest, and rose when it was time to move. This was not static. It acted with intention, intelligence, and mobility. Was it purely supernatural? Or could it represent technology misunderstood by a nomadic people unfamiliar with flight? Even Jewish rabbinical traditions sometimes describe this pillar as containing God's Shekinah glory. Yet, what exactly does glory look like when it produces heat, light, mobility, and guidance? Jump ahead to the prophet Elisha, witnessing his mentor Elijah being taken up into heaven. The scripture states it was a chariot of fire and horses of fire that appeared and separated the two of them, and Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. Many ancient cultures interpret this as divine transport, but if described using modern terms, one might imagine a craft with fiery propulsion, spinning vortices, and a controlled ascension. Interestingly, native legends worldwide from the Hopi to the Dogon tribe also speak of star people or sky visitors arriving in similar fiery vehicles. Could these be cultural memories of the same phenomenon Ezekiel experienced? Even the New Testament contains enigmatic encounters. On the Mount of Transfiguration, Jesus' face and clothes became radiant, while a bright cloud overshadowed the mountain, and a voice spoke from within it. The disciples were terrified, overwhelmed by an intense luminous presence. Was this simply divine power manifesting visually, or something like what Ezekiel saw: light, cloud, and sound converging with intelligent communication? The Bible repeatedly emphasizes that God operates beyond human comprehension. But what if the vehicles of heaven were also beyond ancient understanding, described only with the words available at the time? We also need to consider the strange connection between angels and men in shining garments. The Bible frequently depicts angels appearing as men yet radiating light or dazzling clothing, often descending from above. Think of the resurrection narrative, where an angel rolls back the stone from Jesus' tomb and his appearance is like lightning. Or the two men in white standing beside the disciples when Jesus ascends into heaven, saying he would return the same way he left through the clouds. If we strip away centuries of religious interpretation and look at these events with fresh eyes, could we be looking at advanced beings, luminous due to energy fields or protective suits, interacting directly with humanity? And then there is Jacob's ladder, a vision of angels, ascending and descending between heaven and earth. Most people think of a literal ladder or staircase. But what if what Jacob saw was some kind of vertical transport device, glowing and stretching into the heavens, with beings moving in ordered sequence? Modern-day witnesses of UFO phenomena often describe beams of light and crafts moving vertically in ways that defy normal flight. Could Jacob's vision have been a glimpse of that same technology, interpreted as a ladder in the only terms he understood? Even the book of Revelation provides material worth examining. John the Apostle saw creatures covered in eyes, great wings, thundering voices, and objects that appear metallic and radiant. He describes a sea of glass like crystal before the throne and a city that descends from the heavens. Are these merely spiritual metaphors, or could they represent something tangible, something with technology so advanced that it appears supernatural? Some theorists point to Revelation's imagery as overlapping with modern descriptions of luminous craft, energy fields, and even artificial habitats. Another fascinating point, Ezekiel records that when the wheels moved, their spirit was in the wheels. That phrase alone has puzzled scholars for centuries. How can spirit or intelligence be inside an object? For a modern audience, it sounds like an AI-driven craft, or a vehicle with an integrated consciousness, something almost organic yet mechanical. Science fiction often imagines ships that are alive, fused with their pilots. Ezekiel's experience may not be fiction at all, but a real-life encounter with something beyond our current engineering. If we step outside biblical texts for a moment, the parallels with modern sightings are chilling. Pilots have reported craft moving at impossible speeds, rotating in ways no airplane can, emitting no visible propulsion system. Radar operators have confirmed unidentified objects performing maneuvers that defy gravity. The famous U.S. Navy Tic Tac, UFO cylindrical objects with smooth surfaces and no wings share uncanny similarities with Ezekiel's description of spinning. Wheeled structures that change direction instantly share uncanny similarities with Ezekiel's description of spinning, wheeled structures that change direction instantly. Could these be part of the same phenomenon witnessed thousands of years ago? Ancient astronaut theorists often reference the Anunnaki, beings described in Mesopotamian texts as descending from the heavens and teaching humanity agriculture, writing, and technology. The Bible, in its own way, records sons of God interacting with humanity and passing along knowledge. Did these beings influence multiple ancient civilizations? Were they behind monumental architecture like the pyramids, Stonehenge, or the ziggurats of Mesopotamia? And if so, could Ezekiel have seen not just God as glory, but also technology left behind or used by these mysterious beings? Interestingly, many indigenous cultures, from the Mayans to the Aborigines, claim their ancestors received knowledge from sky visitors. These beings are often associated with bright lights, flying discs, or fiery vehicles. The patterns are eerily consistent, spanning continents and eras. Could it be that humanity has been encountering something non-human all along, interpreting it differently depending on culture and worldview? The Bible might then be one of the oldest surviving records of such interactions, albeit framed through a lens of divine encounter rather than extraterrestrial visitation. If true, this raises deep theological questions. Were these beings servants of God, rebels, or something entirely different? The Bible does speak of spiritual warfare, angels and demons, and deception in the end times. Some theorists suggest that what we call aliens might actually be interdimensional beings rather than extraterrestrial ones, operating from realms beyond our physical perception. Could Ezekiel's vision have pierced that dimensional veil, showing a reality that is normally hidden? This perspective could explain why Ezekiel described emotions of fear and awe rather than curiosity. Whatever he saw was overwhelming, life-changing, and spiritually significant. He fell on his face not because he saw just a machine, but because he sensed a presence, a will within that experience. That aligns with countless modern testimonies where UFO witnesses report a deep emotional or spiritual reaction, as if the encounter reaches beyond just sight and sound into consciousness itself. We also cannot ignore how these encounters often come during moments of cultural or personal transition. Ezekiel was in exile. Jacob was fleeing for his life. Elijah was near the end of his ministry, and John received revelation while imprisoned. Is there a pattern where humanity experiences extraordinary contact during times of great upheaval or spiritual change? Could it be that these beings or forces appear during pivotal moments in human history, guiding, warning, or influencing us in ways we barely comprehend? And what about today? Modern UFO disclosure is increasing. Governments now openly admit to unknown aerial phenomena, even releasing military footage. If humanity is on the edge of open contact, could it be that ancient texts like Ezekiel's vision are preparing us to understand what is coming? Perhaps what was once considered spiritual metaphor might turn out to be literal history and even prophecy pointing toward future encounters. When we look at Ezekiel's vision through ancient eyes, we see the glory of God breaking into human history, full of wonder and awe. But when we examine it through modern eyes, informed by science, technology, and centuries of unexplained aerial phenomena, we find ourselves asking questions our ancestors never dared. Could what Ezekiel saw have been more than just symbolic? Could it have been an encounter with beings or technology beyond our understanding, something so advanced it appeared divine? Across Scripture, from Jacob's mysterious ladder to Elijah's fiery chariot, from Moses' mountain encounter to John's Revelation visions, a pattern emerges, moments when heaven and earth collide in ways that defy ordinary explanation. These events share consistent features: radiant light, unusual sounds, intelligent movement, and often messengers described as both human and otherworldly. The overlap with modern UFO reports objects moving at impossible speeds, glowing with unknown energy, controlled by an unseen intelligence, is uncanny and difficult to ignore. And then there is the mystery of the Nephilim and the sons of God who descended to earth, producing offspring described as giants and men of renown. Were these simply myths? Or are they evidence of encounters with non-human beings, as strange to ancient people as UFOs are to us today? If so, Ezekiel's vision might not stand alone. It might be one chapter in a much larger, ongoing story of interaction between humanity and beings from beyond our world, or perhaps beyond our dimension. We are left with questions, not answers. Were these encounters physical, spiritual, or both? Are we witnessing divine messengers, interdimensional travelers, or something entirely new to our understanding? And why do these encounters always seem to happen during moments of great change, when people, nations, and even the entire world stand on the edge of transformation? One thing is certain: Ezekiel's vision has stood the test of time, sparking conversations for thousands of years, and now inspiring new ones as humanity peers into space and considers life beyond Earth. Maybe these ancient stories are not just religious relics, but clues, waiting for us to piece together as we search for our place in a vast, mysterious universe. And perhaps, just perhaps, what Ezekiel saw was not the end.